think I would agree. I would agree with that. I think one of the things that, and it's interesting the way you were describing bioelectronic medicines, because of course you and I remember those early days in New York, almost a decade ago now, right? When we were sitting down and talking about bioelectronic medicines and the roadmap to what a bioelectronic medicine needs to be. But I think to me, it's funny how I today explain it, and maybe I'll tell you how I explain the genesis of bioelectronic medicines, because we obviously started from the same place and we've picked up on sort of different elements of how the story works.
Yeah.
But I'll tell you this from a vantage also of sort of how GSK was looking at this, right? Like a decade ago, right? Like if you remember, like a decade ago, the world of sort of value-based medicine was allegedly around the corner. Of course, another decade has passed and it truly hasn't come to be. But at that time we said, gone are the days of blockbuster drugs, right? Never mind, billion-dollar drugs. 500 million is the top amount that you're going to be able to get. And if you are going to, never mind thrive as a pharmaceutical company, but if you're just going to survive as a pharmaceutical company, when you're only making $500 million per drug, how many drugs do you need to launch every year to be able to be able to sustain that? And I think I remember the math had been done at GSK, and it was like coming out to like 8 new drugs approved every year. And then we look back at the past 15 years since the merger of Glaxo and SmithKline Beecham, and it was like 3 was like the top that had ever happened, right? So kind of the writing was on the wall, right? And we're like, clearly we can't survive this. So to me, the sort of the genesis of bioelectronic medicines came from this necessity of broadening out the definition of what a therapeutic is. And I think to me, if there's one sort of frustration, I'll call it frustration for the sake of this, but is that even 10 years on, and I think it'll probably be for at least another 10 years, that you use the word therapy and the mind goes to a drug, right? It goes to a pill, it goes to some sort of biological agent, but it does not think about things beyond that. And that is why we started coming down this path at that time, right? It wasn't, we didn't have some sort of love with electricity, or that we thought that neuromodulation alone was sort of an untapped field, but we were looking to find other ways to treat disease, which importantly, and this is why I always say that we stopped using the word neuromodulation, was because we wanted it to compete with first-line therapies, right? And so existing canon lead IPG systems weren't going to allow you to do that, and they weren't going to generate the clinical evidence that would convince the skeptics. So if you can make the devices smaller, and if you could make them wearable, and if you could generate high-quality clinical evidence, you would have a bioelectronic medicine, and then everything, Arun, that you said as well.